Solo is the first time I have not looked forwards to watching a new Star Wars movie. I'm just going to put that out there. I even went so far as to promise myself I would not see it in theaters. I did not want to support a film I thought was going to be of poor quality, with a history of troubled production ranging from bad acting, tonal issues, with a myriad of clickbait controversy. I was extremely hesitant to involve myself with this film in any way. I was ready to wash my hands of the Star Wars spin-offs entirely, especially after Rogue One proved to be a bland adventure without really any well-written characters, character arcs, and originality, even if it did have a fun final 45-minute battle. However, I had to eat my words when friends and family encouraged me to see it after they themselves had a positive experience. So, bracing myself for the worst, I saw Solo, and I am shocked. I am shocked at the fact that the movie was good. It's no masterpiece. It has some issues with tone, out-of-place jokes, and some continuity issues with the original film, but it's shockingly okay. Despite being dragged into the theater kicking and screaming, Solo turned out to be a fairly enjoyable adventure film. Overall, the movie was cliched, and most twists can be seen coming a mile away. The simple fact that they set up and execute these cliches competently enough is enough to give it credit when films such as the prequel trilogy and Rogue One failed in that regard. Rogue One was essentially a heist movie. It tried to show the story of rebels stealing the Death Star plans, except there's not really any heist movie elements to that film. There's maybe 2 minutes, but it's quickly forgotten about, brushed over, and it's over with. This is almost nothing but heists, and it's fun. It's actually fun to watch. It's not a miserable slog. It's dark and gritty at every turn, like Rogue One, which kind of dampened the fun for me on that. Han Solo actor, Alden Ehrenreich, I'm sure I'm screwing that up, was shockingly decent in his performance, especially after hearing about how he needed an acting coach. The Lando Calrissian actor, Donald Glover, was decent as well, capturing an adequate impression of the character from Empire and Jedi. Kira, played by Emilia Clarke, is a fine new character, a tad generic but acceptable. The only issue is that she's supposed to be Han Solo's love interest, but their chemistry just isn't really there. This does make some sense in the context of the film's events, however, but I'll leave you to discover that yourself. L337 Leet, clearly, or L3, I forget. The droid co-pilot of Lando's is a very strange addition and a bit off-putting. Her character is sort of a hyperbolic caricature of modern day, and I hate to say this term in general, but nothing else really fits. Social justice warrior. She is confusing as they take it to such an extreme that you aren't sure if she's a parody that's poking fun at the whole social justice warrior thing, or an attempt to insert one into the film and just handling it in a really ham-fisted manner. Essentially, she's always on a crusade to free droids from their biological owners, which in itself is fine. The only issue is that the presentation, where her hyper-aggressiveness in this endeavor is a bit off-putting. Especially the editing, it just tends to linger on some of the reaction shots with her. It goes from attempt at comedy to just kind of awkward staring at the audience focus where you just feel uncomfortable. The concept itself is fine, but should have been handled with more restraint. However, I'm not done with this character yet. It is heavily implied that L3 and Lando have some kind of sexual relationship, which is so strange I'm not even sure what to say about it. At first it's presented like a joke, but through the events of the film, even Lando seems to treat her as some kind of odd romantic interest. More so than a friend that Luke viewed R2-D2. I love the appearance of this droid, and she seems to be a reference to Leebo, Dash Rendar's droid co-pilot from the Shadows of the Empire, as they sort of share mannerisms. They're both kind of assholes, but the lack of restraint does make a few of her scenes rather awkward. There are a few other characters. Chewbacca is, of course, in the film. He's Chewbacca. There's not much to say about him, really. Woody Harrelson plays Tobias Beckett, who is sort of a scummy smuggler character. Just like the other actors, he does an okay job. Neither bad, nor anything amazing, just adequate. The plot of the film revolves around the need to pay off a crime lord who thankfully is not Jabba the Hutt, though Jabba is mentioned offhand. The characters have to steal and smuggle time-sensitive cargo, and as a result make the infamous Kessel Run, made famous by George Lucas's mistake of assuming a parsec was a unit of time and not distance. As seen in the original film. The sequence is a little different from the expanded universe explanation, but certainly more interesting than what they do there. There are some minor changes to the expanded universe as well, such as Kessel being changed from a giant potato-shaped asteroid to a regular planet with a full atmosphere. As this does not affect the story, I don't take much issue with it. The only major continuity error I really noticed was a claim by Lando that he added an escape pod to the ship, which we see on the nose of the craft and is gone by the end of the film. However, in the original film, Star Wars, an Imperial officer remarks that the Millennium Falcon just jettisoned its escape pods, plural, implying the Falcon already had several small ones installed. This is a minor gripe, and I'm sure the writers over at Wikipedia are already making up an explanation to plug this hole, but once again, as it does not affect the plot of this movie or really devalue the original, I do not take issue with it. The finale of the film does suffer a bit from Return of the King syndrome in that it begins to drag on somewhat too long, showing conclusions to each character and lead-ins to future films that really could have been cut out for the most part without losing anything important. For the most part, the film used practical effects. Early on, there was some awkward CGI with an entirely CG bike trooper, I'm sure they're calling it, that chases Han Solo and his girlfriend on a speeder bike. He's strangely and very clearly CG, even though they could have easily put a guy on a prop and shoved him on a green screen. I don't know why he had to be CG. He doesn't do anything terribly complicated besides crash his bike, which he does a little flip. So they could have had a practical character, just actor there in a costume, and then when it comes to the crash, insert CG stormtrooper guy. That's really the only effect that stood out as off-puttingly unrealistic. There's some references to Indiana Jones, presumably. At one point, some kind of giant monster thing, some kind of alien gets essentially all its flesh sucked off, and it looks like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark when they open the Ark of the Covenant. I'm going to assume that's what it was referencing, as the color in the scene is very similar to the colors in that part of Raiders. For the most part, they avoid pointless cameos. The only time you really hear about characters are just mentions, like they mention some of the bounty hunters from the original Empire Strikes Back, but you never actually see them directly. So it's a lot less off-putting than Rogue One when they just have R2-D2 and C-3PO pointlessly in the center of frame talking about what's going on in a very, very awkwardly handled cameo. It's nothing like that. It's a lot more subtle and a lot more acceptable. For general enjoyment and film production quality, this is how I would rank Solo and the other Star Wars films. Star Wars is, of course, pretty dang good. It's surprisingly not the best. Empire Strikes Back is better than the original Star Wars film. I think by now everyone knows that. If Star Wars is a solid A, Empire Strikes Back is an A+. The Force Awakens is kind of a B+, not quite as good as either Empire or the original film. The main issue in that movie was that it retreaded the original film's plot, and that just made it a lot less fun to watch. Return of the Jedi has plenty of issues that maybe I should talk about sometime, but that unfortunately brings it back down. So it's kind of a B-, maybe C+. Last Jedi, we're going into the C- category. Rogue One, I think I'd just give it a C- as well. And everyone knows about the prequels, so there's not much to say. I would stick Han Solo as above Rogue One and The Last Jedi as far as quality. Not as memorable or as much fun to watch as Return of the Jedi. It has less issues, technically, but since it's not as much fun to sit through, it gets a lower ranking. Now, I will go into full spoilers here, so please shut this off if you have not seen the film yet or just don't really care. Spoilers! Towards the end, there's a sword fight that's a little awkward. Kira, Han Solo's girlfriend, is dueling the head bad guy who has like 2 knives, and they're going at it. And Han Solo brings up his blaster and he's about to shoot the head bad guy, but all of a sudden his girlfriend stops him. And you think, oh no, she's a bad guy. She's going to attack our hero, and then he's going to have to kill his girlfriend. It's going to be sad. And then the Kira girlfriend just kills the bad guy anyways for him. Why didn't she just let Han Solo shoot the bad guy in the face, and that would be the end of it? I think this might be some kind of lead-in to, well, it doesn't make sense in the context of the story, because she lies to, dun dun dun, no one cares, Darth Maul, who is alive because of reasons. He shows up with robot legs and a hologram after Kira has killed everyone except for our heroes, and apparently Kira is an evil, dark Jedi, Sith thing. I don't know if they're going to keep the word Sith. I know Sith was only created for the prequels. Before then, the bad guys were just called Dark Jedi, or just, bad guys. There wasn't a particular thing. They even called Darth Vader a Jedi in the original film. So who knows? But for some reason, Darth Maul is there. And I was so happy to get a Star Wars film without the Force or lightsabers until it happens. Darth Maul, for no reason, uses the Force to pick up his lightsaber from off-screen, and he activates it and sort of plays around with it, sort of maybe to intimidate Kira, but that doesn't make sense because she's apparently his apprentice or something. I don't know. It's very awkward. It's like whoever was in charge of that particular scene said, we got to let the audience know this is Darth Maul. You got to get excited for him. So here he's using the Force and lightsabers. And are you excited for this yet? No? Well, you better get ready for the Obi-Wan movie where he's going to, I'm sure, get cut in half again just for some comedic death. I don't know. I'm not really looking forward to Obi-Wan, to be honest. I'm sure Ewan McGregor will do a fine job as an actor. He's never had any issue doing a good job acting, but it's more the story I have an issue with. Rogue One didn't have a very good story. This had a well-handled, basic story, and I really loved it for that. If Darth Maul had just not used the Force, not used his lightsaber, I would have been completely fine with his cameo. I'm optimistic a little bit, despite being a total pessimist after Rogue One. And I'm gonna be honest, I like The Last Jedi. I know I can already hear people getting angry, but I know it's got huge issues, huge. But just as a viewing experience, I enjoyed it, even though it was a total mess with lots of inappropriate jokes at wrong times and just pointless subplots. If I ignore those elements, I liked that movie. Anyways, before I get off track too much, those are my thoughts on the Solo movie. It was adequate. There is not much more to say. So thanks for listening, and I hope to entertain you again in the future.